My husband and I were stopping over in New York before heading to our temporary home of Poland. We had been living there for about a year and are originally from Australia. We'd spent the past year traveling throughout some of the more shady parts of Europe, so we thought we were generally prepared for any weird incidents. We were tired as we walked through JFK, ignoring everyone who wanted us to take their special taxi. We went outside and waited in line with all the other irritated travelers. When it was our turn, the taxi driver got out and left. Another guy came and took our bags. The motor was still running. I didn't really think anything of it, and I didn't really care at that point. However, I insisted I take my own bag and tried to open the trunk. "No!" he snapped at me. I was startled and said it was okay. I'll just sit with it on my lap. My husband and I travel light, so we only had one suitcase between us. "Can you open the trunk?" my husband asked the guy. "Otherwise, there's no room for us." The guy already looked pissed, and all we were doing was just asking him to do his job. I was already looking for another cab because I couldn't be bothered. "Fine," the guy snapped, and basically ripped the trunk open. I hadn't gotten into the car yet. It was kind of a paranoid thing that I never got into a taxi alone, as a result of some kidnapping stories in Greece of a similar nature. So I waited, and I saw what was in the trunk. It wasn't all over the flooring, just on one side. I instantly felt ill. It looked a lot like blood. The spot was wet and I stared blankly. With the dim light, I could just make out various other stains of a similar but darker colors. I barely began to process it all until the suitcase was in and the trunk door was slammed. I was now wide awake and I did not want to get in that taxi. Everything was wrong and this was a mistake. "What's the holdup? Get in!" The taxi stand dude yelled at us as equally pissed off passengers behind were eagerly awaiting their ride. I tried to get my husband's attention, but he was already in the back seat. If this were a horror movie and I was watching, I'd be screaming at myself, "Don't get in the cab!" So I got in the taxi with my bag on my lap. I clutched it as we spun around corners, went forward sharply at brakes slamming. I felt ill. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Was it real? Halfway through my haze, I realized this was not the way. I mean, it's rude to tell the taxi drivers in their own city where the hell they are going, but I like to be prepared and I like to know where I am, and we are not taking the tourist scenic route where they charge you a lot of dough. This guy was just going the wrong way. "You're going the wrong way." The words fell out of my mouth. The guy said nothing. He didn't flinch, didn't move. "What?" my husband asked me. "We are going the wrong way," I shouted. "Are we going the wrong way?" my husband asked. "We are going the wrong way!" I shouted again. My husband, not one to take shit from anyone, said, "Hey man, don't think you can screw with us. We're not paying you more than we agreed upon, so stop fucking around and take us where we are going, or we are going to call the cops." He had no idea why I was freaking out. I didn't care about the money. I just thought we were a pawn in this guy's master plan. We were going to swim with the fishes in the Hudson or something, because I was going crazy and my mind was wandering. There was blood in the trunk. This guy is trying to kill us with his driving, and maybe planning on it for later in some warehouse, with all of his serial killer cab driver friends. The driver immediately slammed on the brakes at a set of lights. "I'm pretty sure this taxi we are in is not a taxi," I muttered to myself, but the cab driver says, "Do you see the sign? This is a motherfucking taxi," he snapped. "Then do your motherfucking job," my husband snapped at him without a second thought. Perhaps the guy thought this was too much trouble, one loudmouth Aussie bogan and his crazy wife, because now we turn around and we are going the right way. We get to the hotel, and I make sure to check the trunk again, but it was darker now, and I couldn't see anything clearly, except for lots of shredded rags with a deep rust color, staining them all. When I was a freshman, my friends and I would go to a nice bar in the city central. One winter night at around 2 a.m., after a few drinks, I felt quite sleepy and decided to go home, but told no one about it, since I knew others would persuade me to stay for more drinks. So I went out and called a taxi. The operator told me a red VP Passat would pick me up in about 10 minutes. I stood outside waiting. It was snowing heavily and I was really cold. The taxi was not coming. After about 10 minutes, a big blue taxi car stopped next to me and the driver rolled down his window. He asked me where I was going. Being tipsy and all, I told him my address. He told me to get in the car. I got in the back and we took off. Quickly, I realized there was someone sitting next to the driver in the passenger seat. It was a man in his 40s. They were talking about where they should go and mentioned a street that was nowhere near my home. The driver's friend said they should go to that street since he has a young female friend there and we all could have some fun. I thought I'm in a big mess. Then the driver's friend turned to me and asked if I wanted some vodka. I declined and turned my head to the window. Upon closer inspection of me, the friend said, My, you're so young." He sounded pleased. I started asking them to stop the car and let me out. I could walk home on foot. They assured me I would get home eventually. I shrugged and started sobbing quietly while they were making plans. My only thoughts were that I am going to die, and my friends and family have no idea where I am. I asked them several more times to let me go, but they just kept making their plans. I sobered up a bit and realized I couldn't fight them off if I had to. The only thing I could do was run, and I did. I waited till the car stopped at a red light, opened the door and ran as fast as I could to some suburban area. As I left the car behind me, I heard them shouting, "Hey bitch, pay for your ride." It took me an hour to walk back home on foot. Even though it was my own fault for ending up in that car, creeps pretending to be a taxi, let's never meet again. I'm studying abroad, as well as my flatmates here, so we're fairly unfamiliar with the city we're in. This happened a couple of weeks ago on Halloween night. We'd gone out to some parties that night and had been drinking pretty consistently throughout. At about 4 a.m., we finally decided to make our way back home. We're three just turned 20 girls in short dresses, and while my two flatmates were still fairly drunk, I'd sobered up enough. Halloween is always a pretty sociable night, and we ended up meeting and joining various parties throughout. So at this point, we found ourselves about a 50-minute walk away from our flat in an area we barely knew. Fittingly, it was very quiet out and foggy as hell. I remember telling my friend how it felt like that shot in The Exorcist. We walked through empty back streets for a few minutes, eventually reaching a main road. Being the most sober of the lot, I was basically hurting the others, despite being equally as exhausted, thus not at the top of my game. After a few minutes of barely any cars passing, and what taxis we did see, they were occupied. My friend finally flagged one. UK taxis tend to be black cabs, so they are easy to distinguish. This was some random car, but it had the signature luminescent bar on the top with taxi written on it, so I brushed it off. The driver rolled down the window and gruffly asked us where we were going. We replied with our address. He then asked us how much we were willing to pay, equally as gruffly. Even to my drunk friends, this was weird, but being one of those exceedingly friendly Americans, we kept talking to him. We were all tired after all and wanted to get home. I was still uneasy though, but we were staying in a very friendly place, and any other taxi driver we had has been really friendly and always ready to talk to poetic foreigners about the city. She was just about to get in when I happened to look up at the glowing taxi sign and noticed how distorted it was. Looking closer, I realized he just spelled taxi in black tape across it. From afar it looked legit. Plus, if you were driving around at night on weekends, you don't expect your clients to pay too much attention to this sort of thing. I quickly grabbed her arm and pulled her away, telling her to look at his sign. At first my friends didn't notice, but when they did, they freaked out, Realizing this, he drove off real quick. An actual black cab passed not long after this, so we got home safely, but we were pretty shaken due to the money question. He was probably just a dude trying to extort more cash out of drunk people with a fake taxi, but it could have been more sinister. We're young women after all, and you learn to be wary of almost any guy if you're alone late at night. I'm just so relieved I happened to look closer, though I have no idea why I did. So, fake taxi driver on Halloween, let's not meet again. This incident happened not all that long ago. I am a 19-year-old female and obviously enjoy a night out with my friends. This particular night, a girlfriend and I headed down to our local club. We were dancing, drinking, and having a great time when I noticed it was about 2 a.m. coming up to the closing time, and we should probably think about heading off soon because if we waited until it had closed, the wait for a taxi would be quite long, as everyone is looking for one at that hour. So I let my friend know my plans and she insisted that she wanted to stay, so she then walked me out to the front while I waited for a taxi. As we get to the top of the stairs, she sees me off at the door and goes back inside. I say goodbye to the bouncers and start walking over to the next taxi in line. As I start approaching the taxi, I hear my friend call me from behind. She still has my bank cards and money. I walk back to the door to get them off of her and then say goodbye to her again. This time, as I turn to leave, the bouncer says to me, "You may want to take the second taxi in line." Upon me questioning him, he doesn't seem to have a reason behind his advice and just insists I trust him. I explain to the bouncer not only will taxi driver number 1 not be happy, but taxi number 2 may not take me for no valid reason. Me being 19 and naive think to myself, I only live around the corner, I have my phone, what's the worst that could happen, right? Wrong. I took the first taxi in line and there were no immediate alarm bells. He didn't seem different than any other taxi driver. Not exactly polite nor rude, just a taxi driver. We are a few minutes into driving along the coastlines to my suburb when all of a sudden he pulls the taxi over on the side of the road and starts walking around to my door. At this point, I'm so confused as to what is going on. First thought maybe there's a flat tire, until he opens my door. I asked him what he was doing and he replied, "We're going to the beach." Alarm bells and red flags went off left and right and center. I pulled my phone out and dialed 000 right away and told him I was calling the police. He started to panic and told me not to be silly and he just wanted some quality time. As he reached for my arm to get out of the car, I pushed him away, closed the door, and waited to be connected. I read a lot about people who are polite to creepers in these situations, but I was anything but. At this point, I was connected with someone from emergency who asked what my emergency was, and I said I need assistance and gave her my address. She then proceeded to tell me I needed to call the police assistance line if it wasn't an emergency. I responded with, "Well, it's about to be if you don't get someone down here." She assured me a car was on the way and to get out of the car. We are only a minute or two down the road from where we departed, and usually there are 3 or 4 squad cars that are preparing for the end of the night antics. I knew I would have assistance in no time. While this was all happening, he was walking back to his driver's side and attempting to get back in. I don't know if he would have driven away with me in the car or kicked me out or what, but I got out and he sped off. I kick myself for not getting his taxi ID, which is something I usually do. I kick myself even more for not listening to the bouncer who, I see now, obviously had a good reason for me not to get in his car. I rang my friend and asked her to stay on the phone with me. I just told her I was still outside and waiting for the taxi and got bored. She offered to come and wait, but I insisted I was fine. Once the police came, they took me home and asked me what happened. They took a statement from me, but there wasn't much they could do, as I didn't get a license plate or taxi ID. The most I could provide was his appearance and taxi company. I didn't tell anyone about this situation, except for my then friend who was a bit shaken up by this. I hated thinking about what could have happened to me that night and how lucky I am that it didn't. About 2 months later, my boyfriend, his housemate, and my sister arrange a cab to pick us up from my boyfriend's place and take us to the same venue this all happened at. And who was the taxi driver? Yup, same guy. I didn't say anything at the time to anyone because I know that wouldn't have turned out well, but this time I got his ID and plate number and reported it to the police the next day. Apparently, this wasn't the first complaint they've had against this particular driver, but it was the furthest he had gone. Most of the other complaints were creepy remarks. From what I know, the police made contact with the taxi company and informed them of the situation, and I don't know the outcome from then. I have definitely learned my lesson from this. I am a petite 24-year-old female from the mainland of the US, but this story takes place when I was 19 and living in Oahu, Hawaii. Now, the area I lived in was really ghetto, and being half white and half Guamanian, but light-skinned, I was the closest thing to a white person in the entire city I lived in. Whenever I told a local where I lived, they'd give me a funny look like I was crazy or lying. This is relevant, I swear. So, because where I lived had absolutely no jobs, I was living with my cousins who were all careless. I had to take 2 buses for an hour to work, both ways. The day this happened, I was covering for a coworker who had a family emergency, and it was a Sunday. I'd never worked a Sunday before, and this shift was also 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. No big deal. There's a bus stop right next to my work, and they run until midnight, right? Wrong. Buses stop running at 10 p.m. on Sundays. So here I am, standing at a bus stop, alone for about 40 minutes. Businesses all around me are closing. It's getting darker and darker. I'm starting to panic. I'm completely alone, save for the occasional hooker and John wandering around looking for dark alleys and crystal meth. Hawaii is fucking scary at night. Don't believe the paradise hype outside of Waikiki and North Shore. All of a sudden, some homeless, toothless meth head pops up out of nowhere and says, "Hey yo, white girl, the bus no run this late. You fucked. Start walking your skinny ass home." I realize how fucked I am. My neighborhood is seriously dangerous, so even if I did manage to walk home safely, there's no way I'm walking through Camp Park at night alone. It just isn't happening. I open my purse and check my wallet, and find out that one of my cousins has indeed borrowed my last $50, but was nice enough to leave me enough for the bus that isn't coming, meaning I can't even call a cab. Oh, and my phone is dead, because there was some big shot GM at work today, so I wasn't allowed to charge it at my cashier station, and I didn't trust it alone in the break room. As I am internally having a fucking breakdown, a taxi cab pulls up in front of me, windows down. "Sorry dude, I'd love a ride, but I don't have any cash," I tell the taxi driver. He looks at me, looks around and sighs. "Well, where do you need to go? I can't leave you here now that I know that. I'll end up seeing you on the 5 o'clock news." I tell him my neighborhood and he does a double take, then shrugs and motions for me to get in the back. I'm so happy I ignore the foreboding feeling I have in the back of my mind. I have only been living here for 2 months and my luck has been so shitty that I'm just like, yes, my luck is changing. Nah, I was wrong. I hop in the back seat, give him my cross streets kinda near my house, and tell him I'll get his number and pay him later. Thank God I couldn't remember my address. Everything is normal for the first 20 minutes of the ride. Then he starts asking me really weird questions. How old are you? Are you a virgin? Are you married? Do you carry a gun in that big purse? I lie and tell him yes on the gun, starting to feel creeped out. He stops talking after that for a bit, until he notices he's almost out of gas. I look. He really is almost out, so we pull up to a gas station, but instead of parking next to a pump, he parks behind the building, near a dumpster and says, "I'm going to pay for gas and have a snack, then I'll take you back." I start to say something about needing to get home and he cuts me off. "You're riding for free, let me eat my fucking snack." I'm like, oh, okay, and consider bolting when he comes back, but I have no idea where we are or how to get home. So instead, when he leaves, I reach into the front and unlock all the doors, just in case. It was an older model car, so I knew they'd stay unlocked unless he manually locked them again. He comes back, empty-handed, no snack. Fuck, am I the snack? Fuck. He gets in the front seat, opens the middle console and pulls out a fucking meth pipe, a bag of meth and a weed pipe, some weed and a lighter. Let me have my snack, then we can go. He packs the meth pipe, takes a few hits and blows it at me, then he starts passing it to me. I'm good for right now, thanks. He looks pissed but puts it down and grabs the weed pipe, repeats the process. I'm like 2 seconds from bolting when he throws the car in reverse and leaves without pumping any gas. Now holding the meth pipe again and taking occasional hits. What the fuck? What the fuck? I'm freaking out. This dude is driving like 70 miles per hour in a 30 lane, high as a fucking kite. But the scenery starts to look familiar. I realize we're like 5 minutes from my house. I look over. Doors are still unlocked. Gotta think fast. His hand is slowly reaching for my knee, and he's looking right at me, not at the road, and he's moaning like my thigh is giving him the world's best orgasm. We're going to have fun tonight, baby. I'll teach you how to take a dick. I tell him I'm not interested, and he just laughs. Your phone is dead. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters? We're in Kahili, girl. His hand is still on my leg, and he makes a left, away from the street I live on. I realize how fucked I am, but I'm oddly calm. I change tactics. Problem is, if I don't check in, they'll come looking for me. I'm down to party, but I gotta check in first. I'm a little white girl. If I don't come home, they'll go check my work and my coworkers saw me leave with you. I don't want you to get in trouble. You know how white people are. I'm counting on the fact that he doesn't know my family isn't white. I'm counting on the fact that he is high enough to not know I am lying, and I'm counting on the fact that he didn't see that all my coworkers were gone. He gives me a weird look, then hands me the meth pipe. Okay, white girl, let's party. I hold the pipe up to my lips, wait for him to look towards the road and emulate what I saw him doing, turning it side to side while lighting it. I produce a tiny bit of smoke, don't inhale and immediately blow it out, hoping to God I don't get fucking high and I never have to explain why there's meth in my system. If I do get high. You're fucking burning it. He gets pissed and grabs the not hot end of the pipe from me, wasting my fucking dinner. I show you how to do it right. He takes a hard right and I realize he's headed for the cross streets I told him. My vision is a little fucked. Everything seems so bright and my adrenaline starts to feel almost euphoric. Fuck. Am I high? Fuck! The street I live on is wrapped around a hill, easily a mile wide, and the cross streets we're on are about a quarter mile from my house. As we get close to the cross streets, he slows down, asking me what house it is. I lie and say I can't tell, and say to him, "Can you please slow down? It's so dark, and I just moved here. All the houses look the same and I'm high. Please, slow down." He agrees and slows to about 5 miles an hour, and I make a break for it, swinging the door open and jumping out of the still-moving car. I feel like I'm fucking flying as I hit the dirt of the sidewalk and crab walk until I can get to my feet, and then I break out into a run. I probably looked like a fucking lunatic, but I did not give a fuck, nor did I bother looking back. The oldest cousin I lived with was 39, male and built like a fucking Samoan. If I could just get to my house, everything would be okay. That was all I could think. Plus, because he'd turned, we had actually passed my house, so we would have to drive to the next driveway and turn around, because it was a narrow road. Plus, he was at the bottom of the hill, so we wouldn't be able to see which house I was in. I didn't see headlights, so I figured that was a good sign. Finally, I ran into my front yard, unlocked the front door, relocked it and slid down to the floor, shaking and crying. I went to the front window and peeked out. No one on the street, no cabbie, nothing. I was safe, I thought. I ended up not telling anyone what happened, because I always get the same lecture when something bad happens to me. You were acting like a stupid little college white girl. If you were smarter, yada yada yada. But everything seemed okay. I started working day shifts only, avoided being alone or ever at the bus stop. Life went on. About a week later, I noticed a black car with tinted windows parked a few houses down from my house. I figured it was a neighbor's friend and brushed it off. Only it was there the next day too, and the next. I finally asked one of my cousin's sons if he had seen it. He said it showed up at around 6 every day, which is when I would get home from work. I started freaking out. Finally, I broke down and told my giant cousin what happened. Surprisingly, he didn't lecture me. He felt bad that I couldn't come to him for support and apologized for riding me so hard about being from the mainland. And he said he'd deal with the black car. The next day, my cousin's son picked me up from the bus stop near the house on his moped. We noticed the black car following us, but acted like we didn't. We pulled up to the house, and as soon as the black car parked, out came my Samoan-built, muscle-bound cousin with a metal baseball bat, taking practice swings as he approached the car. It reversed halfway down the street, hit a fence, jumped a curb, turned around in a front yard, and was never seen again. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So guys, I really hope you enjoy today's video, or tonight's video, or Tuesday's video, technically. Oh god, I gotta learn to go to bed at night a lot earlier. It's Mortal Kombat, man, it's keeping me up at night. Which, by the way, guys, I got a question to ask you guys. What's your favorite fighting game? I mean, I've been playing a lot of Mortal Kombat X lately. For some reason, I don't know why. One day I just woke up and I'm like, you know what? I just want to punch something and, you know, scream get over here with Scorpion. And if you guys do play Mortal Kombat, what's your favorite character to use? Mine right now is Sub-Zero, Ermac, and I guess Scorpion, even though he is kind of cheap. I mean, if anybody agrees with me, put a comment down below about that. I'm sorry I'm kind of like stalling here, guys. It's late at night. I'm kind of, oh god. If anybody does a lot of YouTubing and editing, right after editing, you're like so bewildered and just so like, I need some burgers, I need some pizza, I need some soda, or Mountain Dew for that matter. But anyways, guys, I'm sorry for dragging this whole powwow out for you guys, but I hope you guys enjoy the video again, and as always, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.